30 candles. My first birthday party since I was a kid. My mother made a speech with her glass raised, smiling at everyone I hadn't seen in years. Then she said, she's selling her apartment to clear her brother's debts. Laughter, nods like it was already done. I felt my face stay still. I said, no. My mom's smile cracked. She snatched the gift bags off the table and shouted, you don't deserve to be our daughter. People stared at their plates. No one moved. In that silence, I understood what I'd really been funding for years, without being seen. By the time the candles were blown out, the room felt smaller. My parents had chosen my brother's favorite restaurant, not mine. A private room, beige walls, framed photos of landmarks I didn't recognize. My name was on a cake I hadn't picked. My mother hovered, correcting the waiter, smoothing the tablecloth, making sure everyone saw how generous she was being. My brother arrived late, apologetic in the way that always worked. He kissed my mother's cheek, nodded at my father, and took the seat closest to them. I sat across, smiling when people told me it was nice to finally celebrate me. The speech came quickly. My mother stood, glass raised, voice warm. She talked about sacrifice, about family pulling together. Then she said the sentence like it had already been agreed upon. Heads nodded. Someone clapped. When I said no, the room stalled. My father didn't look surprised. He looked tired, like this was an inconvenience. He leaned back and said quietly that I was being dramatic. That debt was temporary. Family was permanent. My brother stared at the table. He didn't deny the debt. He didn't ask me directly. He let my parents do the asking for him. That had always been the arrangement. My mother reached for the gifts then. Bags rustled. Tissue paper tore. She said I didn't deserve them. She said it loudly enough for the cousins to hear. I felt my chair scrape as I stood. No one followed me into the hallway. Outside, the night air felt clean. I sat in my car until my hands stopped shaking. I thought about the payments I sent every month. Rent help when my parents fell short. Groceries, utilities, small transfers marked family. I had told myself it was temporary. The next day, my mother texted like nothing happened. She asked if I'd cooled down. She reminded me of my brother's interest rate. She said selling the apartment would be sensible. I didn't reply. At work, I kept my head down. Answered emails. Finished tasks. My phone stayed face down. I noticed how easy it was to function without explaining myself. That quiet felt new. That evening, I opened my banking app. I reviewed the standing transfers. Amounts. Notes I had written to soften the truth. I didn't cancel anything yet. I just looked. What hurt wasn't the demand. It was the certainty behind it. The way my parents spoke as if my life was an asset they managed. The way my brother's silence counted as consent. I realized this wasn't a bad night. It was a pattern. One that had paid itself for years. I remembered other scenes I had excused. Holidays where my raise funded emergencies. Calls that began with praise and ended with numbers. My father saying I was reliable the way you describe a tool. My mother thanking me publicly, then correcting me privately. Each time I swallowed the discomfort and sent the money. Standing there now, I understood the cost. Not dollars. Permission. They had learned I would bend quietly. Tonight I didn't. That was why it escalated. That was why it had to. I walked away because staying would have rewritten me. I drove home, boxed leftovers cooling on the seat, and let the silence settle. No apology came. No explanation followed. Just the same expectation waiting. I knew then that leaving the room was the first step, not the last. I would not explain it tonight or ever again, to people who heard me clearly and chose to look away and stayed silent when it mattered most. The silence after the party wasn't empty. It was crowded with memories I had ignored. I started seeing the pattern everywhere once I stopped defending it. My parents had always framed my help as temporary. Just until things stabilized. Just until my brother caught up. But stabilization never came. There was always another delay, another explanation, Another reason: urgency belonged to him and patience belonged to me. When my brother missed payments, my mother called me before the bank did. When he switched jobs again, my father reminded me that family covers gaps. They spoke as if this arrangement protected everyone. In reality, it protected only one direction. I checked old messages. Years of them. The tone was consistent. Gratitude at the beginning. Pressure at the end. My brother's name in the middle like a constant variable. I noticed how rarely they asked how I was doing without tying it to a need. How often praise came only after compliance. Friends reached out after the party. Few said it was awkward. One said my mother had seemed overwhelmed. No one said it was wrong. No one asked if I was okay. They were careful not to choose sides. At work, deadlines kept coming. I delivered. The ordinary rhythm of my days didn't change. That steadiness made something else clear. My life functioned without their input. The fear that had kept me generous was quieter than I expected. My brother finally messaged me. He wrote that he hadn't meant for things to go that far. He said our parents were under stress. He didn't apologize. He asked if I could help a little to keep the peace. That word stuck with me. Peace in our family meant my silence, my money, my flexibility. Never meant fairness. I didn't answer him. Instead, I opened a spreadsheet and listed every monthly payment I had been sending. Rent supplements, utilities, insurance gaps, subscriptions I didn't use but paid for anyway. Total surprised me. Not because it was high but because it had become normal. I realized I had been subsidizing a story. The story that my brother was unlucky, not irresponsible. That my parents were supportive, not dependent. That I was generous, not obligated. The party didn't create the conflict. It exposed it. I stopped replying quickly after that. I let messages sit. When I did respond, I kept it brief. Neutral. Uninformative. The tone my parents had always used with me when they didn't need anything. They noticed. My mother sent a longer message, explaining family history, reminding me of sacrifices I didn't remember making. My father sent a single line about loyalty. Neither asked what I wanted. That was when the truth settled fully. I wasn't being asked to help because I could. I was being asked because I always had. And when I said no, the system wobbled. The silence that followed wasn't punishment. It was recalibration. They were waiting for me to return to the role that made everything else easier. I didn't. For the first time, I let the discomfort belong to them. The boundary was crossed the week after. An envelope arrived at my apartment. My mother's handwriting. Careful. Familiar. Inside was a printed notice from their bank. Past due. Final reminder. My brother's account. A sticky note was attached. Please handle this. We'll talk later. No greeting. No question. Just expectation formalized. I sat at my kitchen table and read it twice. Not because I didn't understand. Because this time it wasn't emotional. It was administrative. They had moved from asking to assigning. I called the bank not to pay but to listen. The representative explained options calmly. Extensions. Restructuring. Consequences. I thanked her and hung up. That afternoon my mother posted online. A vague message about betrayal. About children forgetting where they came from. People responded with sympathy. I recognized the pattern immediately. Pressure by proxy. I didn't comment. I didn't defend myself. Instead, I updated my records. I removed myself as an emergency contact. Cancelled the standing transfers. Changed passwords I had shared out of convenience. Took less time than I expected. The hardest part wasn't the actions. It was accepting that this boundary would be read as aggression. My brother called that night. His voice tight. He said he'd never ask me again if I just helped this once. He said Mom was crying. He said Dad was embarrassed. I listened. I didn't interrupt. When he finished, I said, I can't. He hung up without saying goodbye. The fallout was immediate. My parents stopped pretending this was a misunderstanding. They framed it as disloyalty. They told relatives I'd changed. No one asked me why. That was the moment something ended cleanly inside me. I stopped waiting for context to matter. Stopped hoping tone would soften the truth. The truth was simple. They needed me compliant more than they wanted me present. By choosing not to comply, I had stepped outside the system that depended on me staying quiet. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. Not because things were resolved, but because I finally understood my place wasn't missing. It had been removed the moment I stopped paying for it. And I didn't reach back for it. The consequences arrived quietly, the way bills do when autopay fails. My parents didn't call to apologize. They called to negotiate. My father asked if I could reconsider temporarily. My mother asked if I could help, just until things settle. Neither asked how I was doing. Without my transfers, their balance shifted fast. Late fees appeared. Promises they'd made on my behalf unraveled. My brother missed another payment and blamed timing. My parents blamed pride. I stayed silent. Relatives reached out, curious now. Not accusing. Just asking where I was, why I'd stepped back. I answered politely and briefly. I didn't explain the party. I didn't share messages. I let the facts stand alone. The story they told about me stopped spreading once I wasn't there to react to it. Drama needs participation. I offered none. A month later, my mother sent a single sentence. "We didn't think you'd really stop." I didn't reply. Focused on my own life instead. Renewed my lease. Set savings goals. Built routines that didn't depend on approval. The calm felt earned, not borrowed. I still love them. That didn't disappear. But love no longer meant access to my account or my decisions. On my next birthday, I kept it small. A dinner with friends who listened. Candles. No speeches. No demands. When the night ended, I went home to my apartment and locked the door. Not out of anger. Out of clarity.